Hi there, I just thought I'd get in front of the video for once. I'm normally sat behind the screen talking to you faceless, so I thought I would just pop a little video on here, mainly to say thank you for so much for so many new subscribers to the YouTube channel. Absolutely delighted, and so I thought I'd make a special effort today, come out today and bring you out into the spring woodland of the Postbank, which is part of the National Veluwe National Park in the Netherlands where I live. I come out with my dog. I quite often come out with my dog as a sort of comfort blanket because I'm out in the woods on my own. It's not that I'm scared, but it's quite nice to have some company when I'm out for a few hours. And yeah, I just came out today mainly because it's spring. I haven't been out for a few weeks because the weather's been really bad. And also, I've had a few questions just recently about shooting woodlands. And obviously, I shoot an awful lot of woodlands for ICM, and I used to do it an awful lot before I did ICM as well. So I've kind of learnt how to get the best from it. A lot of the questions kind of stem from finding a focus point, because I'm always suggesting you look for focus points and balance in an image. And you can see behind me, around here, this is actually quite what I would call a messy woodland. You come in here and you're kind of looking for any kind of focus point. How can you find a focus point when all the trees are sort of looking the same, or there's a bit of a mess? And essentially, when you come into a wood, you kind of need to look for a little bit of calm and create calm amongst the chaos, because woodlands do tend to be quite chaotic, because the kind of new trees, old trees, fallen down trees, new sort of spring growth, dead wood, you know, a bit of everything really. The sun's actually coming out, how lovely. So today, this video is from the start here, where I'm just introducing you to the day and introducing you to myself a little bit for the first time. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, take some videos and show you the original images that I'm looking at, so what I'm seeing in my mind, what I'm sort of seeing actually in front of me, and then what I'm going to create. So I'll do that back post-processing in the computer. So this video might be a little bit longer. I'm sort of envisaging maybe around half an hour, including the videos and things, rather than my usual 10-minute slots. But I hope you enjoy the complete introduction to finished product. Okay, thank you. We'll see you shortly. Okay, so this is my first place. I've literally walked about 20 paces from where I took the video to start with. I've already found my first place. The sun's come out, which is lovely, so it's really catching the light, and you've got these beautiful shadows on the path. And what just, I'll put my camera down for a second so I can zoom in for you. What just captured my eye was this little group of trees just here, because the way that the sunlight was falling on it. There's some quite bare trunks over to the left, and then there's some lovely colours of green on here. So I took the first picture, and the first picture was kind of something like this. I'm not sure whether I had this tree on the right in there or not. I can't remember off the top of my head because I was using my other camera. And I felt that the side on the left was rather lacking. So all I did was literally I moved a couple of steps to the left. And then you'll see when you see the ICM image that you now have this green framed on the left-hand side. And you'll see this coming into the image, softening. And you now have a beautiful line. You have the balance in the image, so you've got trees on both sides of the lane now. Excuse the dog, you can just hear him snuffling around in the background. He gets bored when I do the ICM. Anyway, so this is probably going to be where you're going to see the ICM image evolving from here. And I've taken one without ICM and one with ICM, so we can have a look at the development of that. Okay, so I'm here in Lightroom now. I'm going to have a look at some of the images that I took at the first location that we just watched the video from. So as I mentioned when I was stood there, these trees on the right-hand side first captured my eye. I loved the variation in sort of textures and colours and contrasts. And so you can see here what I was talking about, lovely trees on the right. I thought these two would balance it up quite nicely. This was starting to look a little bit messy. I was aware that the path was sort of on the left-hand side rather than leading in from sort of a diagonal, but I thought it might be okay. However, if we go and have a look at what I produced, this was the first ICM. I took about 15-20 images here, so there were quite a lot of images to choose from, but I very quickly became aware that this was sort of a dead space now in the image. Although I had these two trees on the left-hand side, they weren't by any means balancing this big block here on the right-hand side, and I was kind of falling out the bottom left-hand corner of the image. So I'm really glad that I noticed that when I was actually out, and I thought to take those two steps to the left, which was where we ended up here in the video when I left the video.
And we've got this lovely green sort of foreground detail, and then you've got the trees on the left hand side. And what's lovely with ICM is that it kind of simplifies it. So although this looks as though it's sort of blurred and it's sitting in front of it, it doesn't matter too much when you get to ICM, because it just sort of creates a texture. So this was my chosen ICM image from this location to share with you that I really quite liked. Just a slight upward movement with the camera, not too much. You can sort of see a little bit here where the lines move up, so you can see just the movement of the camera. Very small movement, but I just love how it adds a little bit of a sort of a floaty texture to the leaves, but you can still get the texture of the tree trunks remaining. Beautiful light, so it was quite bright, and I hate using my filters unless I absolutely have to. So I was at ISO 100, f22 and quarter of a second, and that was as slow as I could get my shutter speed down, which I comfortably work at that speed. That's no problem at all, but I couldn't have gone any slower in this situation without really sort of blowing the highlights. Interestingly, I found this one when I was also having a look through, and I quite like this. It's very impressionistic. A little bit blurred for my liking. I've just lost a little bit of the detail of the tree trunks that I like to keep. I'm thinking I might actually go back and play and try and combine the last one and this one, and just bring a little bit of softness to the last one, or just bring a little bit of detail to this one if I combine them in Photoshop and have a little play later. I've not done that yet, but it's something to have a go at. Now, just like learning for you guys, when I stood there, I thought, well, why not? Let's just have a little play. And I do encourage you to have a play, even if you have absolutely no intention of using the image. It's sometimes nice to just see what happens when you do something. And this is me moving the camera upwards, but actually pressing the shutter halfway through the movement upwards. And when I tend to do that, I do tend to make bigger movements. So you kind of lose the bottom of the tree trunks here. It becomes very abstract. It's all about sort of the colours and lines. Something I might have really enjoyed doing in the past, but it's really not my style of ICM anymore. Although it might be possible to combine this with another one later on if it was something I wanted to do. But I just thought it was really interesting for you to see. This is a slightly different technique. So you press the shutter after you start moving the camera in the direction that you want to. And very early on, whenever I teach ICM, we discuss the movements to make in certain situations, and I generally suggest upwards or downwards in the woodlands, but I just thought for the fun of it, I'd move horizontally in the woodlands just to show you that it really doesn't work. Maybe you could use this as a texture later, but this will be being dumped after I've recorded this video for you, because it's not something I will ever use again. The lines are, yeah, it just doesn't please me in any way, shape or form. But it's quite nice to have sort of made it for you, show you the difference you could get from a horizontal to a vertical movement. So I will just leave you with this one from this location, this beautiful spring-like woodland as a starters for our video, and we shall move on now to the next one.
Okay, so I'm just going to walk you down here. I'm just walking down this path. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to find, but I just thought this was an ideal opportunity to discuss chaos in woodlands and trying to find some kind of calm or things that you might want to photograph. Now, I'm quite big on looking for contrasts, so I'm always looking for differences. It could be colour differences, it could be light or dark differences, it could be size differences, it could be textural differences. Here on the left we have what I would call quite a messy woodland. There's some quite young trees here. There's a few old trees. There's trees standing in front of each other. To me, there's nothing really jumping out at me that's going to make a nice image just here. It's just, yeah, it's not really grabbing me. Same on the other side. It's just very messy. And you will find woodlands where you just cannot find a nice composition. Some woodlands, some very young woodlands, it's very hard to find a focus point or interest. Now I've just rested here and actually you see two lovely tree trunks which would create some quite strong elements, but the rest of it's rubbish. You know, you've got dead trees in the bottom, you've got green. Yeah, you could create an ICM, but would you have normally taken that as a normal image? No. So why create it as ICM? Why not go for making a really good ICM image with an image that you think you would have liked to start with? So I'm just going to go down here a little bit because I think there's some more trees that look a little bit more broken up and a little bit more separated. Now, I love shooting downwards into dips because then you can lose the sky and you don't have to worry about the sky. And here you've got some really quite strong broken up tree elements, and this is lovely. I've just noticed these 3 trees just in front of me. It's a little bit messy on the ground, but I think we might be able to lose that. And then you're seeing some trees over to the left here. Now I'm just going to try, holding on to the dog at the same time. These I'm noticing as being darker than these elements in the front. So you've got these lovely 3 big strong ones in the front, and then these 2 to the left. Okay, if I look to the right, again, it's a bit messy, you know, there's nothing really grabbing me. Further on, I think we might be able to find something more down in the dip. Again, that's quite a nice wide shot, just depends which lens you're using. And then on the other side, we have some nice big trees, but again, that's probably not the image I'm going to shoot. I'm going to try and shoot this one for you and see what we can do with it.
So I thought I would just show you the resulting images from the last video that I took you on, where I stopped on the side of the track as I went down, and I saw these trees on the left hand side. And yeah, sometimes when you see an image to take, you think it's really good, and then when you start ICMing it, it really doesn't deliver the results that you'd hoped. So having done a lovely chat about how I thought it was really going to work, I'll leave you to decide whether it did or not. In my mind, I really struggled in this location in the end. Certainly in this image, you can see it's very busy, although there's lots of interest throughout. There's actually an awful lot of stuff going on throughout the whole depth of the image from front to back. Some sort of light patches here, and there's an awful lot of things. And it would rely very much on getting the right ICM movement in here, I think. Just to show you, this was the image. Yeah, I took about 4 or 5 images, and I very quickly realised that I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't in the flow of it. I wasn't really getting a feel for it, and what was coming on the back of my camera just wasn't doing it for me at all. So I cropped in a little bit. And this isn't a great image because what I do quite often is I'm working on my ICM images, and then I don't want to change the ISO and everything, so I go as slow as I can when I take the sort of traditional image with my shutter speed. So this isn't very well focused, but what it does give you is a feel for this new composition. So I tried to reduce the amount of clutter and just really concentrate in on these 2 sets of trees. And this is what I ended up taking. This is actually a crop. I'm going to show you that this is the end image. And I've cropped in to get rid of a little bit, and I've increased the whites and the blacks and the contrast a little bit. But this was the original image, and you see here on the left hand side you had this extra tree. It was quite dark, so I pushed it a little bit. But I could see the sort of movement, the ICM movement I quite liked in this one. Just run you through very quickly a few other ones that I came locations or sort of situations I thought would work and didn't work. Some of these may have been that it was quite early on in my ICM walk, and sometimes it takes me half an hour to get settled in. Once I've taken a couple of good images that I like, then I feel a bit more confident and a little bit happier. But quite often early in the walk, I'll take maybe 4 or 5 different locations, and it will take me a while to find something that I really like. So this one probably should have worked with a big tree trunk balancing on the right hand side. But what you will see is there's some really light patches throughout the whole woodland, and then there's this messy wood lying down in front. This was probably the best one, and this one just didn't do it for me in the end. It just wasn't delivering what I'd seen with my eye and what I thought I'd be able to create. So I moved on from there. This one again, this was just walking down the alleyway, and I quite like this. It was really pretty with, again, with light. Again, you have to be very careful of when it's this light and sunny. You start having an awful lot of contrast on the in your images. This one, this was the result. I haven't done anything to this. This is straight out of camera. It's okay. The more I look at it, the more I think, okay, it's not so bad. But I'm still feeling it's a little bit open here on the left hand side, a bit like the first image that we discussed of the whole video. I'm feeling there's a little bit too much light at the front here. I'm not really feeling like I'm walking or wanting to walk down into the woodlands. And I quite like these trees here, so I thought I'd try ICMing them, and that didn't work either. Not in this composition anyway. I just didn't feel it was, yeah, it was just too much. I think maybe I needed to swap lenses. Maybe I should have put my wider angle lens. This was on my zoom lens, my 70 to 200, and I just couldn't get that far enough from the tree to make it work. So maybe if I change lenses, but quite often I try not to do that too much and just move on if it's not working. This one, it actually did work. I quite like this. I've noticed these 3 big trees in the front here, and all the spindly ones in the back. And created this. Again, very little done. Post-processing, so you've still got some very bright areas, but I really like how I've kept the tree trunk detail, and then you've just got all the sort of little spindly brown tree trunks and the green in the background. Last one, I looked across up from the past. I was looking up, which is always a bit of a sort of no-no for me because you start getting the sky in. So then I tried to crop it quite tight to balance these 3 tree trunks and this green. It's not too bad. For me, there's just too much detail coming through in the leaves. There's not enough ICM movement going on here for me. That's a personal thing. So that's just a selection of images, most of which didn't really work. But I think it's always nice to see things that don't work as well as things that do work. So from now on, you're going to see things that are working.
Okay, just a quick video to show you. I came up here and I just spotted these 2 big trees in the foreground here, and they're nicely balanced with the trees on the left. So I've taken some pictures of these. You're going to see hopefully all the pictures that I took here, just to show you the many different opportunities. And I spotted that there was like a silver birch in between these 2 trees. And I thought, okay, let's walk round this way a little bit. So what I did was I just walked a little bit down here, and my aim was to get some of the silver birches in. So now you can see I've got these big tree trunks, and I've got this lovely contrast with the lighter silver birches that are really straight, whereas the other big ones are sort of dark and gnarled and bended. So you've got a lovely contrast there. And then you'll see as I kept playing, I sort of spotted something in the background between these 2 trees, and I thought, again, if I just keep walking around, and you'll see there's various trees in the way, so I had to kind of keep moving past the trees to get to the next shot. And then I found this one as well. But you'll see, just in here, it becomes quite messy just around this tree. So it's you have to sort of start deciding which side you would like. Would you like those 2 trees on the left? Would you like them on the right? Would you like them to separate out? You see here now you have lovely 3 trees, little trees, and then you have these 2 big trees in the middle here, and you have a lovely separation. If you go with a wide lens, then you can go quite wide, get a nice balance, but then you get quite a lot of sky in, which is then a problem. So I think we're going to go for something like that, which is what I'll show you in the post-processing.
So we're now in the next location where I spotted these 2 big trees in the front, and the 2 sort of bouncing trees on the left hand side. And this is quite a close crop in, but this is kind of what immediately caught my eye with regards to balance and contrast. So as I discussed it during the video, I walked around this one a little bit. So I just thought I'd show you some of the images that I actually created ICM wise, and why I liked them and why I didn't. So it's essentially the first one I tried just to see whether the ICM was going to work in this location. I quite liked it. There was nothing majorly wrong with it. I wasn't too impressed I didn't like the sky up in the top here too much. And I did find it a little bit of a boring composition. Yeah, it's green in the back and you've got 2 trees and 2 trees. But other than that, to me, there wasn't any sort of depth to the image or anything. It was lacking something. For me. So I also had spotted, I think I mentioned to you in the video, I'd spotted a silver birch in between the trees, which wasn't really coming through in this image. So I went looking for the silver birch. And as I mentioned to you, I sort of walked round the edge to the left, and then I brought the silver birch out from behind the trees to the left-hand side, and there were a couple of other silver birches there, or other straight trees, which immediately start to give more interest because you've now got a lot more going on within the image. You've still got the 2 trees on the left, you've still got the 2 trees on the right, but now some of the spaces are being filled up and you've got different textures. Still a bit messy sky. I've taken it down a little bit, the highlights, but probably I haven't worked on these an awful lot before showing them into this video. So if I was going to show this or use this any further, I would definitely start thinking about cloning or reducing how strong these highlights are in the image. Sometimes they don't worry me too much, but sometimes I do find they're dragging the eye, and they are most definitely the brightest parts of this image. And I really want my eye to sort of rest around the bottom here, not keep sort of moving up to the top. So I then decided to, on this one also, I wasn't sure, this one sort of, the tree went up into here and then I lost it. So I decided to walk slightly further around to the left to try and separate the tree a little bit more from the tree trunk. And this is the ICM. I feel we've kind of gone back a little bit of a step because now I don't feel there's so much interest throughout the image. I actually preferred the last image, but you can see I've lost an awful lot of the sky detail by zooming in here. So You will find that if you have a wider lens, you'll end up with more sky, but if you zoom in, you kind of maybe lose the wide aspect of the woodland. It just kind of depends on what you're actually wanting to portray. Is it strictly contrasts and structures, or is it actually the sort of overall feel of the woodland? And that will depend on how far you process it. So this is me zooming out a bit now again, because I saw these beautiful silver birches, and I absolutely love silver birches. Strong tree trunks, you've got a bit of a wood here. I ended up crossing this one here. I let it cross, but I let it split behind, so it crossed, but there was a gap at the top, you'll see. So this one, I think, of all of them, is the most pleasing. It's a little bit of a wider crop. Again, you've got the sky, which I would address. I've probably tinted a little bit blue and dropped the highlights a little bit, probably tone out this little area up here, so that you can hear where it's absolutely no detail at all. But otherwise, I think it's quite nice, and I think I used a little bit of a sort of upwards sort of shift, a very gentle. It wasn't a straight upwards. I think by the looks of the image, it's more of a little jiggle upwards rather than a just straight movement. And I quite like this. It's quite a soft image, but there's texture, there's detail, there's interest. I quite like this one on the right hand side because it's sort of balancing up. It's sort of reflecting the little ones on the left hand side. Got the same amount of green here as here. I haven't cropped this at all. It's literally as it came out of camera regarding the size. Sometimes I get it right in camera, sometimes I don't. Just sitting here, I've just noticed there's a bit of a strange area up here on the right hand side, which I would address. I would either put it green or I would just crop it on the edge there. I will have a look at that later. Anyway, that was just doing these images here to match the video. So that's quite nice for you to have seen the ICM images from that location. So this is probably about an hour and a half into my walk through the woodland. By this point, I'd taken so many videos that my battery of my camera, my phone was almost dead. So at this point, you haven't got any more videos. But what you have got is still images and the resulting ICM images, which I can still talk you through really clearly. So I really urge you, when you're walking along a path, to make sure you turn round and look behind you, because you will get a completely different idea of images than if you have a look in all directions. When you walk down a path, something might not strike you, and you turn round and you'll just be in awe. And I just walked up this hill, so I had noticed these silver birches on the left hand side as I came up, but I didn't think they made a very strong image. And then I got past them and I thought, well, I'll just have a look and turn round. And I just loved how this path went through the middle. And I loved how strong these silver birches on the right were, and they were echoed with the silver birch on the left. And I thought it was really lovely. And those little silver birches in the background versus the sort of big old gnarly tree down here. I just thought there was lovely interest all the way through down here. What I didn't like, and I did notice on some of my images, again, I was really pleased I noticed this while I was taking them, and so I was able to move. I didn't like how these two sat on top of each other. They ended up with a sort of a blob in some ICM images. So what I did basically was I took a step to the right, which what I didn't want was these two to be on top of each other. So I was still very conscious of keeping them apart as well. But here now you've got a lovely green space in between, which is really quite lovely. And I quite like this one now. So I've got this beautiful line going through the middle. You've got the dark wooden tree trunks against the vibrant green in the background, and that's kind of echoed here on the right and echoed on the left. And then you kind of got a reflection of the silver birches on both sides of the trees. So I really quite like this location. Had I not looked behind me, I'd have never even seen it. And for those eagle eyes who are looking at the bottom of the screen at the same time, you'll see I had a little play in black and white. Some people ask me, can you do ICM in black and white? Yes, you can. Sometimes I go out with the black and white setting set on my camera. I always shoot in RAW, so I always end up still with the colour images, but you can shoot in black and white at the time, so you can kind of develop your eye and have a look, get a better idea if it's what you're producing. Certainly when I shoot in the snow, if I've got in mind that it's going to be black and white in the end, if I know very early on, then I will put my setting on the camera to black and white. So but I quite like this. It's quite spooky. There's enough contrast that you still get lovely contrasts. Some of these images I did have to play with in black and white, and they just turned into a bit of a mush. And that's a really good indicator of how much contrast you've got in an image. If you can turn it into a black and white and it still looks strong, then you obviously have a lot of contrast in it. If you turn it to black and white and it all looks the same, then actually you haven't got that much contrast in it afterwards. So I looked back up the hill. I literally went another couple of 5-10 meters on from where I just shot the last one, and there was this lovely path going round a bend and up, and I saw these lovely trees on the right hand side, and then some of these trees on the left hand side. I thought it was just a lovely composition, and this little one in the front just added a little bit of colour interest, and I love the dark green here, and you've got a bit of dark green on the right hand side. So this was my first go at this location, and I really love it. It's very soft, it's very gentle, really capturing the essence of the spring greens. There's a little bit of too much brown, possibly here. It's a little bit distracting because it's so bright. Again, this location, the same as many other locations, I wasn't 100% sure, so I took a step to the right, came off from behind this tree to almost down on the path. And then you get quite a different composition. You get quite a line of trees running to this one. So rather than it being all about these big trees, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little sort of side. I don't know which one I do prefer, but anyway, you've now got a lot more. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, possibly 7, 8. You've got quite a line of trees. You've got more sky though, so more sort of bits coming through the sky. So that's not ideal. But I quite like this, and this one's still a nice sort of main player balance with this one. This was without the sun. This was it was cloudy, and then the sun started to come out. Now, this is a slightly different movement, I think, because it does look quite different to this one. This one's got a very smooth look about it. This one's starting to keep a little bit more detail, but you can see the sun is just starting to come out on the tree trunks. So you've got a shadow and light and shadow on the tree trunks, which is really lovely. When this happens, however, as I mentioned before, you do have to start thinking about the shutter speed, whether you need to affect it. The sun came out completely, and you can see how bright it is, and then how many like light specks you suddenly get on everything. But how much contrast it gives to the tree trunks. I absolutely love it when the sun comes out on the tree trunks, and you can get the shadows here as well, which all makes it a very, very different image from the one in the shadow. Very different. And some people love the shadow, and some people love the sun one. I'm not completely settled. I haven't made my mind up on this one, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure. So that was really lovely. And so yeah, it was just nice to be able to show you what the difference of the light can make. So then I walked on a little bit further, and I spotted these big tree trunks here, and these kind of ones all messy, but there's sort of a conglomeration in the woodland. But you've got the lovely greens, and you've got the lovely shadow lines. And I captured this with a very small movement, very, very small movement of the camera. And I just want to bring a little bit of movement into the leaves. I try to keep the trunks and keep the detail of the trunks as much as possible. Especially on this one. This was standing in the same location, but I just turned to the left. I was walking up a path, and the path was actually lined by this line of trees here. And I'd noticed on here these lovely shadows of the leaves coming off onto the trees. And I was actually able to keep hold of that in my ICM. So you can see it here on the thing. These stripes, you know, it's amazing. The more times you look at an image, the things you notice. I hadn't noticed those before, but they're really, really strong, quite strong lines from another tree next door. This looks like a sort of longer sort of sweep of an image. You can see sweep of the camera. It's a bit longer movement within the camera. I quite like it. I wouldn't say it's one of my favourites, but I do love how I've managed to keep hold of the shadows on the trees here. Another location just a few steps away. This is a bit more of a smooth movement, so it's becoming a little bit more abstract. Still kept a little bit of detail in the leaves, but beginning to lose it. I think I've probably jumped up. You can see how this level is probably from here. It's kind of moved up a little bit here. So again, it's nice for you to see different time styles. I do aim to try and keep the same style, but I don't always manage it. This one works brilliantly in black and white. I think I absolutely love the black and white version of this, because you suddenly notice how the light is falling on the right hand side of the trees, and you get these beautiful dark shadows on all of the trees. I think that's just really lovely. The contrast is absolutely amazing. and the structures, the big tree trunks are suddenly so strong and so bold compared to all the little squiggles and wiggles from all the light sort of falling on the leaves. Where do we go here? I then spotted this green sort of bushiness about halfway up a tree, and I love doing this in the autumn when it's orange, and that really works really well. I have one in my other presentation for my beginning ICM course, and it's almost exactly the same, completely different location, but the same concept. It's colour that's low down. You've not got to go up into the branches, the sort of treetops to get this one. But I like the balance between these trees, this tree, and then you've got this sort of slap bang in the middle, which almost pushes the comfort, it being right in the middle. But I think that's part of the interest of it, because it's not just sort of bowing to all the rules. And then through our Dutch woodlands, we actually have an awful lot of order. They love their order here in the Netherlands. And even in the woodlands, you have these beautiful lines of trees. I mean, I've just fallen in love with these. But they are actually quite hard to shoot in ICM because, you know, when you're there in your person, they are so grand, they are so tall, and you just can't capture all of that in ICM unless you start bringing the sky in. And so it's playing with what you have in front of you and trying to figure out what works. And so I took this one first, and I quite like it. I quite like the colours and the structures. It's a little bit of a weak image though for me. I'm not sure whether it was a good idea to leave the green on both sides. It's not what I consider one of my strongest images. Move on to this, and I much prefer this image. Slightly different movement, just a little bit of an upwards jiggle. In fact, there might even be you can see here, it's literally a stop and then move up after I press the shutter, then move the camera upwards quite quickly, I think. And I love the colour it's created in this tree here. And this down here, where you've got the sort of the greens, the greys, the yellows, the whites, the greens up here. I think it brings some lovely feel to the kind of makes the tree trunks quite smooth, and I quite like that. And then last but not least, just as I was about to arrive back at the car park, the sun fell on these silver birches here. It's just along a bike path here, and I was trying desperately not to get the grey boring concrete bike path in here, and that turned out to be really hard to get these separate but no bike path. But there's some lovely yellowy, sort of bright green yellow trees in the leaves in the background, and then you've got all the sort of low green foliage, and I just really loved the textures. And again, you've got some sort of reed grass or some sort of rough grass in front of it, and I just again loved all the textures. So I waited for a few minutes and waited for the sun to come out again, and I had a bit of a play. But this was actually the first image I took at this location, and this was my favourite image, which does actually happen sometimes. You know, you take a good image and think, oh, I'm sure I can better that. And you spend another half an hour playing at the location, and when you get them back to the computer, you'll find it's your first image that you liked after all. So I really hope you've enjoyed this walk through the woodland with me. I think I've covered pretty much everything I think about when I'm out there in the woodland. It would be lovely one day to meet any of you if you ever get to the Netherlands or I get to the UK for workshops. But in the meantime, do stick with me on my YouTube videos. If people contact me, or if there's anything you're interested in knowing about, do let me know. I will try and tailor make videos to what people ask. Normally my videos are produced in response to a question on one of my courses of things that people find really quite helpful or question me about. So I do tend to make videos for things that people have asked for. But yeah, do give me a like. Do let other people know if you'd think they'd enjoy my videos. And I look forward to speaking to you on the next one. Till the next time.